Ethiopian Airlines has about $90 million in revenue sitting outside Ethiopia that it cannot freely bring home. Think about that for a second.
The dollar liquidity infrastructure for global commerce.
This is one of Africa's largest airlines. They generated over $7.6 billion in revenue in 2025 and carried millions of passengers around the world. But according to a recent report, about $90 million of its ticket revenue is sitting in overseas markets. About 45 million is reportedly stuck in Russia because of sanctions that has disrupted their normal banking systems. Another $45 million is spread across markets, including Mozambique and Angola, where foreign exchange shortages and delays are making it difficult to move the money. And this is the part I want you to think about. The airline made the money legitimately. The customers paid into their revenue accounts. But the company still has a problem. They can't freely move the money to where they need it. And this is not a lack of sales, right, problem, but it's a financial infrastructure problem. So imagine you are Ethiopian Airlines. You sell a ticket in Russia. The passengers pays you in Russian rupees. You have expenses there, so you use some of that revenue locally, for fuel, ground handling, and other operating costs. But now you have money left over, and you want to move that money back to your headquarters or use it somewhere else. Under normal circumstances, your banking infrastructure handles that movement. But if banking channels are restricted or foreign currency isn't available, the process becomes a problem. So you now have something that sounds strange because you earned the money, the money exists, but you can't freely move it. And that's a problem any company operating internationally or all the companies right now are experiencing. And this isn't just an Ethiopian Airlines problem. According to IATA, the International Air Transport Association, approximately $1.2 billion in airline revenues were blocked globally, with Africa and the Middle East accounting for about 93% of that total. That's roughly $1.1 billion. Meanwhile, airlines still have to operate. They have to pay for aircraft, fuel, maintenance, insurance, employees, airport fees, and many of those expenses are ultimately tied to US dollars. So you can have a company earning revenue in one currency while its major expenses are in another. And the money it earned may be sitting in a third country. That's when this becomes a liquidity and treasury problem. Now, I'm going to be very clear. A stablecoin does not magically solve sanctions. If a transaction or entity is legally restricted, put it on a blockchain doesn't make those restrictions disappear. You still need to go through compliance. You still need licensing. You still need sanction screening. You still need liquidity. But there are other situations where digital dollar infrastructure could potentially make a major difference. Imagine an international company receives revenue in one market, and instead of relying entirely on local currency, they they instead of them relying entirely of the local currency, or moving the local currency from local bank to correspondent bank, and into international bank, and back to their headquarters. You could design a compliant treasury system where eligible funds can be converted into digital dollars and moved through the new international financial infrastructure. Then the company could potentially hold the funds digitally, move them to another market instantly, pay an international supplier faster, convert into another currency, and or deploy the capital into another transaction. Doing that is a major shift in money management. And this is where I think the bigger story is. A time is coming when digital money will become normal. Not just digital dollars, but digital euros, digital naira, digital pesos, digital cedi, digital dirham, and eventually digital versions of every currency around the world. And when that happens, I believe moving between currencies will become much more seamless. So if you are a CFO, treasury executive, airline, multinational company, commodity trader, or government, don't start by saying let's use stablecoins, right? Because I know you've been hearing from different sources, how stablecoin is, improving money movement across borders. One thing I would say is start with your people, because they need to understand how this thing works. So start with training your finance and treasury teams. You start, so that they can understand stablecoins, how digital dollar settlement works, understand different types of custody, understand foreign currency conversion in and out of global currencies using digital dollars or digital money. Understanding the compliance and regulatory environment of it, and most importantly, understand where this technology actually fits into your business, because you don't need blockchain everywhere. You need it where it solves a real problem. Second is, then you do an assessment. Look at how money actually moves through your organization. Then ask, how long does it take us to receive international revenue? How long does it take us to move that revenue back home? What are we paying in banking and intermediary fees? How much are we losing through FX? How much working capital is sitting in different countries? How much money is trapped because of local liquidity constraints? And are we earning anything on our idle balances? Those are the questions that you want to ask, because you want to identify exactly where the friction is. Because once you understand that problem, you can then determine whether digital financial infrastructure actually helps. Then you pilot it. Don't move your entire treasury overnight. Take one problem. Maybe it's moving international revenue, or supplier payments. Run a controlled pilot and measure it, against how much did it cost? How fast was the settlement? How was the FX What was the FX rate? How much liquidity was required, and what compliance controls were needed? And most importantly, did it actually improve the business? If it does, you now have evidence for a broader implementation. But if it doesn't, then you continue using your current system. Then after that, you then design the operating model, because for companies, digital money isn't just about opening a wallet. You have to define who provides the custody, what does the liquidity, where does the liquidity comes from, how do you convert it into local currency, how does accounting work, how does reconciliation work, what are the regulatory requirements in each market, and what happens if something goes wrong, right? You want to know that. Then you need the technology, but you also need the people, controls, liquidity, compliance, and operating processes around it. And this is where we at Avano Labs comes in. We don't want to tell a company, here is stablecoin, go and use it. To us, that's not the best strategy. We want to help businesses understand where digital financial infrastructure can actually improve their operations. So our approach is, train, for your team can understand the technology and the use cases, assess, to identify the problems in your current payment and treasury system, pilot it, so to test a specific use case in a controlled environment, and design, to build the operating model, infrastructure, and implementation plan, and eventually implement and scale. That allows us to work with businesses before they ever need to adopt a new digital dollar infrastructure at scale. And as the Avano Labs ecosystem develops, those businesses can have a path to settlement, liquidity, and digital dollar infrastructure that they need. Because when you think about what this could mean, an airline shouldn't have legitimate revenue sitting in multiple countries with no efficient way to access it. A commodity trader shouldn't have millions of dollars or any currency tied up while waiting for settlement. A multinational shouldn't need unnecessary pools of capital sitting idle around the world simply because moving money between markets is difficult. And a business shouldn't have to treat every international payment as a completely separate financial process. We are now living and operating in a global economy, and our financial infrastructure needs to catch up. So if you are running a business with international operations and you are asking yourself, where could digital infrastructure actually help us? That's the conversation I want to have. We can reach out to us at Avano Labs at info@avanorlabs.com. info@avanorlabs.com. We are beginning conversations with companies and institutions to train their teams, assess their current payments and treasury systems, identify practical use cases, and design pilot programs for them. Then eventually help them to determine where digital financial infrastructure can actually make sense for their business. And if you want to be among the first to access the infrastructure that we are building at Avano Labs, you can also join the waitlist at avanorlabs.com. avanorlabs.com. I'm going to keep breaking down real companies, real financial problems, and real use cases in this series. So make sure you follow on LinkedIn, TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. And also go back and watch the previous episodes. They will help you understand the technology and the real use cases, because it's about understanding the financial system we are moving towards and being prepared for it.
Commerce.